On our very first date, she asked me why I never laughed at her jokes. I told her truthfully, just wouldn't feel real to me. And in that instant, she walked right out. Why do deep thinkers like me often get ghosted instead of getting roses? It's a question I keep coming back to. Most guys are raised believing that being smart, honest, and self-aware will make them more appealing. But for some of us, the deeper our thoughts, the lonelier we get. We pick up on things everyone else misses. We ask questions that make people uncomfortable. And the worst part, we can't pretend to be somebody we're not, just to blend in. We're not heartless, far from it. But small talk, fake smiles, and surface-level connections, they're exhausting. We're craving genuine love, but most times, that craving leaves us isolated. Why does it seem that depth pushes people away instead of pulling them closer? Why do women often turn away from intelligent, introspective men? And why does it feel like the smarter you are, the more misunderstood you become? This isn't just about dating or relationships, it's much deeper. The very traits that make us wise might also make us seem unlovable. Let's dig into why this happens by looking through the lens of one of the most famously lonely geniuses, Kierkegaard. Back in his day, society didn't celebrate men like him. Instead, he was mocked, ignored, or labeled as too much. And honestly, not much has changed today. Think about it. Society thrives on predictability. People feel safe around those who stick to the script, smile politely, say what's expected, avoid complicated thoughts. But a deep thinker, he rejects scripts. He questions everything, even flirting itself. He watches everyone chase trends and wonders why they care so much. To most, this isn't fascinating, it's threatening. When you don't fit easy categories, you can't be controlled easily either. And in a world where conformity feels comforting, the introspective man becomes unsettling, not because he's trying to rebel, but because he reflects deeply. He refuses to fake it, which makes him unpredictable. And for many women, raised in a culture that prizes emotional safety, unpredictability feels like danger. When a man sees through games and manipulation, he can't be fooled. When he refuses to act like every other guy, he stops feeling familiar. And unfamiliarity triggers fear, a primal, often subconscious fear. It whispers, he's different. I don't know what he's capable of. So, many simply walk away, not because he's wrong, but because he's just too right, too awake, too deep. But why do women, in particular, seem to feel this discomfort more intensely around deep thinkers? The answer is found both in our biology and in what modern relationships have become. Nowadays, the idea of love is saturated with instant comfort. Back fast, shower each other with likes, and keep things as effortless as possible. Affection is easy, validation is immediate, and anything that disrupts this flow, like a demand for truth, can feel like friction. A conscious man, a genuinely intelligent man, doesn't fit into this new comfort-first model. He isn't looking for someone to simply share his life with. He's after something deeper and more challenging. Truth. Where most people focus on looks or stories, he looks straight through them. He sees what's behind the masks, senses small manipulations, and notices even vulnerability when it's just for show. And that makes things difficult, because today, the experience of modern love often relies on illusions. We buy into the fantasy of perfect compatibility, the myth that being enough should come effortlessly, the belief that love should always be easy. But to someone awake, someone seeking truth, a love that avoids discomfort isn't love at all. It's just denial, dressed up as romance. He wants depth instead of dopamine hits. He wants connection, not the easy fix of codependence. This kind of desire can be exhausting or even overwhelming for people who approach romance like a form of escape. For them, his honesty might sound like criticism, his calmness mistaken for coldness, his moments of solitude interpreted as not caring. He doesn't love loudly. He isn't interested in putting on a performance. He loves with clarity, sees things as they are, not as others want them to be. In a world that confuses mixed signals and confusion with excitement, such clarity can come across as intimidating, sometimes even threatening. He isn't chasing anyone, playing a game, or running after validation. He just sees. And once he's seen you, truly seen you, returning to shallow affection isn't possible. That's both his greatest gift and his secret burden, because the deeper his vision goes, the rarer it is to find someone who won't flinch when faced with such unwavering awareness. Still, he stays true to himself. He'd rather walk alone sometimes, for a long stretch than lower his standards or deceive himself. Maybe, then, that solitude isn't a curse at all, but a quiet, powerful form of strength. Let's dig deeper. So many people spend their lives craving belonging. They join crowds, follow trends, repeat whatever brings approval. Everyone tries to fit in. But Kierkegaard had a word for this. He called it the crowd. To him, the crowd was untruths masquerading as safety. The crowd doesn't really think, it just echoes. It's not a real gathering of individuals, but a blur, a collection of borrowed personalities. The conscious man refuses to become part of that blur. He's not interested in following the noise. He wants to know where it comes from and why. That's dangerous, at least to those who've spent years avoiding questions and living out scripts handed to them by others. When a man exposes the truth, especially the kind that most people spend a lifetime trying to ignore, he gets called difficult, too intense, or just plain different. But what people really mean is, you're making me look at something inside myself I'm not ready to face, while others adjust for approval. He aligns himself with honesty, even if that means eating lunch alone. He'd rather be lonely and authentic than surrounded by people for all the wrong reasons. In a culture addicted to echo chambers, someone who only listens to his own inner voice isn't just rare, he becomes a threat. Not because he's disruptive, but because he's free. When people say women fear intelligent men, they're not usually talking about IQ points. What triggers anxiety is simply this: he doesn't play the game. He doesn't chase. He observes. He isn't swayed by looks, doesn't fall for emotional tug-of-wars, and perhaps, most unsettling of all, he genuinely does not need you. That's terrifying to those who see relationships as a constant process of validation, a cycle of wanting and getting, negotiating and winning. For many, love means figuring out what makes someone tick, how to press their buttons, and how to keep the connection alive through constant attention. Get distracted, and the other person pulls away, just to watch you chase them back. But the conscious man removes himself from all that. He's not hooked by praise and will disappear quietly when things start feeling artificial. That's not arrogance. It's simply being clear with himself. He's been stung by shallow affection before, and now refuses to lose his peace, just to fit in. Most women are used to being pursued, flattered, and met halfway in every conversation. The conscious man does none of that. He doesn't care about being admired, which is a much higher standard than simply wanting attention. He's too unpredictable to be controlled, because he doesn't anchor himself to social routines. It's not chaos. It's a refusal to orbit around someone else's expectations. He doesn't rebel with raised voices or wild actions. He just quietly ignores the shallow stuff. In a world where everyone wants to be noticed, his indifference can feel almost violent. Whenever a woman says, "He intimidates me," what she often means is, "He isn't playing by my rules, and I have no idea how to get the upper hand." Kierkegaard describes something called the sickness unto death, not a physical illness, but a sort of spiritual emptiness, so deep that you don't realize it's happening. The worst part, it feels like nothing at all. And this is the real danger for many men today. Not that they're broken, but that, bit by bit, they forget who they are, becoming what they think the world wants: pleasant, predictable, marketable. They wear masks and perform roles until one day, all that's left is emptiness inside. Even if everything looks fine on the outside. Most intelligent men aren't desperate because they're flawed. They're hurting because they've been torn away from what matters: depth, truth, their own sense of self. Our culture tells them to trade everything that makes them unique, to quiet their own questions, to water down their intensity, and just blend in. The more they silence themselves, the less seen they feel in their own reflection. The true cost: becoming a stranger, drifting through life with no real sense of ownership or purpose, all because it's easier than risking rejection. This isn't just about individuals. It's built into the way society responds to anyone who dares to be awake. The world tells these men to forget who they are, and rewards them the less they remember. We now live in a time obsessed with appearances, where everything from our looks to our personalities is carefully curated for effect. Dating feels more like crafting an appealing resume, one that promises just the right dose of fun and mystery, than actually risking something real. It's all about the right photo, the right message, the right move, at the right moment. Not connection, but performance. The game is everywhere. Don't text too fast. Don't seem too interested. make sure you always have the upper hand. None of this is about genuine closeness. It's all about strategy. But a conscious, intelligent man just doesn't play. He isn't interested in the power struggles, the scarcity games, or the manufactured mystery. Even when he doesn't understand his own mysteries, he would rather be sincerely uncertain than play along with the script. He doesn't chase for the sake of chasing. He seeks the kind of relationship that doesn't depend on tactics or timelines, that makes him an outsider, not because he thinks he's better, but simply because the game itself feels empty. Declining to play isn't about superiority, it's just that the rules are boring. But the trouble is, when you won't join the dance, you reveal what's always been there. The emptiness behind the show, the hollowness behind the rituals, the loneliness behind the scenes. For plenty of people, the game is their comfort zone. Refusing to take part can feel like a personal rejection. That's why deep thinkers often find themselves alone, not because they're unlovable, but because they're unwilling to trade truth for comfort. They want to be truly understood, not just admired for a mask. Let's get even deeper. There's this concept Kierkegaard talked about called the sickness unto death. It's not a physical illness, but a spiritual emptiness so profound that you don't even realize you're sinking into it. And this applies to many intelligent men today, not because they're broken, but because they're disconnected from their true selves. Most of them aren't hurting because they're flawed, but because society asks them to give up what makes them unique, their depth, their intensity, their questions. We live in a culture that rewards being pleasant, predictable, and marketable. So men learn to put on masks and play roles just to survive. They learn to shrink their thoughts, laugh at jokes they don't get, avoid topics that make others uncomfortable. This slow fading away of the self is the quiet despair Kierkegaard warned about. The greatest danger isn't loud failure. It's losing yourself so gradually that it feels like nothing at all. It's the hollow kind of success, where everything looks fine on the outside, but inside there's emptiness. And for men who are deep thinkers or intensely, this can be devastating, because the more they try to fit in, the less they feel seen, including by themselves. They'd become strangers in their own lives, going through motions they never chose, living scripts written by others. This is not just a personal tragedy, it's systemic. Our society fears and sidelines these conscious men who refuse to forget who they are. Today, we live in an era obsessed with appearances, not just physical beauty, but curated personas, polished profiles, and rehearsed performances. Modern dating feels less like connection and more like a carefully crafted audition. The rules they follow: don't text too fast, don't seem too eager, always keep your options open. It's strategy, not intimacy. But the intelligent man doesn't play these games. He's uninterested in power struggles, immune to manufactured scarcity tactics, and allergic to manipulation. He's already a mystery even to himself, so pretending to be mysterious is meaningless. He doesn't chase, not out of arrogance, but because he's seeking something real, something that lasts beyond the superficial play. That refusal to play makes him an outsider, not because he thinks he's better, but because the game itself feels empty and exhausting. And when you don't play the game, you expose what everyone else is hiding. The emptiness beneath the rituals, the hollowness behind flirtations, the loneliness behind the screens. For many, the game is their identity. So rejecting it feels like rejecting them personally. This is why deep thinkers often find themselves alone, not because they're unlovable, but because they won't perform to be accepted. They don't want to impress, they want to be understood. And real understanding requires depth, which many find terrifying. Kierkegaard's philosophy offers a terrifying but beautiful idea: to live authentically. You must leap not with certainty, but with faith. This isn't faith in religious ritual, but faith in yourself, in becoming who you truly are. This leap demands sacrifice. You give up comfort and conformity. You abandon roles like the obedient son, the agreeable partner, the successful man everyone expects. You leave behind masks and step into your true self, even if it means standing alone. For the intelligent man, this is both necessity and burden. He sees how suffocating these social plays are, refuses to pretend, and often walks a lonely path because of it. This sacrifice is what Kierkegaard called the night of faith, a time of internal struggle where you detach from crowd validation and live by inward truth instead of outside applause. This detachment feels unsettling to many, and that's why society, and women in particular, often don't understand him. He's not rebelling for attention or drama. He's stepping back because the alternative is spiritual death. He's not too deep or too intense. He's simply unwilling to live asleep. This leap of faith isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, lonely, and mostly invisible to the outside world, but it's the only path to authentic selfhood. And it scares people because it questions how many are willing to truly wake up. The cost of awakening is the quiet loss of belonging. The more conscious and intelligent a man becomes, the more foreign the world feels. Conversations sound shallow and repetitive. Dating seems like theater. The social rituals feel meaningless, not because he's cynical, but because he sees them too clearly, and once you see, you can't unsee. His laughter grows rare not from sadness, but because little feels genuinely real anymore. This isolation is part of transformation. He no longer fits on the surface anymore. Instead, he craves silence, substance, and depth. The world punishes these cravings, treats detachment as arrogance, depth as weirdness, and sensitivity as weakness. But deep down, these are signs of evolution. What many call loneliness is actually the soul shedding noise and distraction. This is the moment when the shift happens. You stop trying to belong and start trying to become yourself. You walk a narrower path not to escape others, but to finally meet yourself. From childhood, intelligent men learn a silent lesson. You must shrink to fit in. Speak simpler. Don't think so much. Pretend not to see what you really see. Otherwise, you'll be seen as arrogant, weird, or too intense. Many learn to wear masks, not out of deceit, but survival. They master small talk, downplay insights, dull their edges not to be loved, but just to avoid exile. But deep inside, there's a quiet rebellion, a refusal to assimilate. Because assimilation is not acceptance, it's erasure. The man who refuses to erase himself must pay a price. He'll be misunderstood, called difficult, labeled too much. But he's neither. He's just unwilling to betray himself. There is a cost to this refusal. Fewer invitations, awkward silences, people walking away without explanation. But there's a gift, too. He keeps his soul. True selfhood demands sacrifice. You cannot be free and please everyone at the same time. You cannot be whole and palatable to the crowd. The man who refuses conformity knows rejection isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's a filter, a separation of those who need masks from those who can face reality. He may walk alone, but he walks upright not because he wants to be different, but because he refuses to be less. When someone truly sees you beneath your mask, your story, your projections, it's both terrifying and illuminating. The intelligent man's gaze isn't judgmental. It's discerning, but it feels like exposure. To a woman used to admiration, this can feel cold or intimidating. But what she fears is the vulnerability that comes with being seen so clearly. This is why he isn't interested in playing the game. He doesn't fall for charm or flattery. He sees patterns, projections, and the scared child behind the confident smile. To be truly seen means vulnerability, and many fear that more than anything else, so they call him cold, detached, or too logical. But in truth, he refuses to worship illusions. And in a world addicted to illusions, that refusal feels like an attack. Before Kierkegaard became known for his philosophy, he experienced something deeply personally heartbreaking love story. He was in love with a woman named Regina Olsen. They were engaged, deeply connected, but Kierkegaard walked away, not because he didn't love her, but because he loved something even more, truth. He understood that his path full of isolation, reflection, and inner conflict would consume anyone close to him, especially someone as kind and innocent as Regina. So he broke her heart and shattered his own in the process. That sacrifice echoes throughout his writings, filled with longing and haunted by the absence of the woman he could never forget. Regina became his eternal muse, not through possession, but through renunciation. This wasn't a rejection of love itself. It was an acknowledgement of what love demands, the cost of depth. Choosing a path of truth and awakening often means walking alone, accepting loss, and living with questions that never fully resolve. It's a road most people won't take because it offers no comfort, only clarity. Kierkegaard died alone but not empty. He became the philosopher of the soul, the man who gave language to despair and faith alike, because he refused to dilute who he was. Regina eventually married someone else, yet her name remains etched quietly in the margins of his work, a symbol of what was lost in pursuit of something greater. That's the true price of depth and the mark of the truly awakened. Now, think about this. How often do we encounter someone who refuses to play along with life's shallow scripts? Someone who stands apart by simply being authentic, by holding space for truth, even when it isolates. That's the conscious, intelligent man Kierkegaard described, the one our modern world often misunderstands, fears, even pushes away. So why is this important for you as a content creator? Because you're telling a story many feel but few express. You're digging beneath the surface where others settle. Your audience senses it. They crave truth. They long for connection that goes beyond the shallow scroll and swipe. This video isn't just highlighting loneliness or struggle. It's revealing the quiet power of standing alone and choosing your own path. It's about embracing the depth and intensity that set you apart, not as a curse, but as strength. When you share this story, you're giving voice to those who felt invisible, misunderstood, or afraid to be their true selves. You're inviting them to see that their depth is not a fault, but a gift, a call to faith in themselves and the courage to leap into authenticity, even when the world seems to turn away. So, what's next? The final part will bring everything together: how to live as a deep thinker in a world that often resists depth, how to find peace in solitude without giving up on love, and most importantly, how to keep shining your light without dimming it for others. So how does a deep thinker, someone awake to all these layers, live in a world that so often rewards the opposite? How do you keep your integrity when everything around you pulls, subtly or directly, toward compromise? For starters, you let go of the idea that being understood by everyone is the goal. Chasing universal approval means becoming what you're not, bit by bit, but real fulfillment comes from owning your uniqueness, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's lonely. When you stop performing, stop shrinking, stop hiding, you make space for real connection, however rare. Genuine love can't reach you if you're armored in pretense. But if you're honest, if you walk upright in your truth, you create the chance to be loved as you truly are. Let's be clear, solitude isn't failure. For deep thinkers, time alone isn't a punishment. It's where clarity and peace grow. In solitude, you process life honestly. In crowds, you risk becoming a shadow of yourself. Find power in your own company. Learn to enjoy your thoughts. Savor quiet. Build a life based on values, not reactions. But don't fall for the myth that loneliness is inevitable or permanent. Being misunderstood doesn't mean you'll always be alone. It just means you haven't met your people yet. There are others, fewer, but real, who crave depth, honesty, and presence. The world is full of those waiting for someone who isn't afraid to show up fully, scars and all. When you stop diluting yourself, you become a beacon, and real connections, though rare, will find you in their own time. It's also about discernment. Don't waste energy on those who only want your performance. Don't barter truth for the illusion of comfort. Let go of relationships that demand you shrink. You're not here to make everyone feel comfortable. You're here to be whole. And in being whole, you naturally polarize and will distance themselves. A few will move closer. Trust the process. Authenticity acts as a filter, sifting out the superficial and inviting in the genuine. If you're wrestling with this now, remember, you are not failing. You're evolving. The pain you feel isn't a flaw in your nature, it's proof of your refusal to settle. It means your standards are intact, your soul unbroken. Don't betray that. Even when doubt sets in, even when silence feels heavy, remember that Kierkegaard's loneliest nights produced some of humanity's most profound wisdom. Depth is costly, but it's never empty. So, how do you keep your light alive in a world that so often prefers the dim and predictable? You do what the wise always have. You stay loyal to your vision, even if it means walking alone. You nurture your mind, guard your spirit, and share your insight for those who need it most. You keep your standards not as walls, but as invitations for those willing to meet you where you are. And when you do connect, when someone finally embraces your depth, instead of recoiling from it, you'll recognize something rare, a relationship that isn't built on illusion or negotiation, but on mutual presence and courageous honesty. It may not look like the stories you've been told. It might be quieter, slower, fewer words and more silence, but it will be real. After all, what's the point of being loved for someone you're pretending to be? Much better, much braver, is to risk being misunderstood, to risk solitude, for it's only there that your true self can emerge. And only from that place can you ever hope to be truly seen, truly loved, truly known. If you've watched this far, you already know there's more to you than a role, more than a mask. Your depth is a gift, not a flaw. It's the source of your wisdom, your resilience, your unique view on the world. The struggle is real, but so is the possibility for a life filled with meaning and genuine connection. So hold your depth, protect it, shine it. The world may push back, but you don't owe it your silence or your disguise. To be real in a world built on illusion is the greatest act of courage there is, and there's nothing more attractive, more magnetic, or more necessary than that. Thanks for watching. If you found yourself in these words, remember, you are not alone, even if sometimes you have to walk alone for a while. That's not a defeat, that's the path. And as Kierkegaard would say, to dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. Keep daring, and keep thinking deeply even if no one's watching. That's your superpower.